Hello, everyone. It is my absolute pleasure to be here today with the super talented Emma Warren. Emma is MD and owner of Elite Staffing Solutions, and Emma has very, very kindly said that she will come here with us today to share her personal journey on building her recruitment business. And Emma has achieved so many incredible things in the last 2 years. And we're really, really thrilled. Thank you so much, Emma, for agreeing to be with us today to share in that journey, because what you've achieved is what so many people inspire and aspire to achieve. And not only have you done it more than once, you've also transformed your business as well as yourself personally in terms of your own personal journey. So it's going to be really exciting hearing about that today. And not to forget, recognized as Female Entrepreneur of the Year. So we are in very, very grateful to have you here today. So thank you ever so much. So for the benefit of people joining us and listening to our call, our interview today, could you just give a brief summary, a brief explanation of what your business does and how long it's been established?
Okay, so I set up Elite Staffing Solutions in January 2015. I had just had my first child actually, and had an epiphany after that of thinking I wanted to have my own business. I'd been out of recruitment for 4.5 years actually, and I'd gone back into insurance, but I figured that there was a niche in my area for insurance recruitment particularly, but just I generally felt that there was the agencies locally to me particularly just weren't particularly dynamic. So I thought there could be a space for me here. So literally set up then, it was just myself. I was very fortunate actually to have my mum who wanted to come on board with me, just because she decided to leave her position and wanted to come and do our accounts for us. So she sort of invited herself in essentially, but never left. And that thankfully worked very well. So set it just the two of us, and just kicked off, straight away. And then over the course of 2015, I grew by one consultant and started to sort of gain some traction. As I said, particularly at that point, we were specialising in insurance recruitment, general commercial, I would say, all perms. We started our veterinary non-clinical niche at the end of that year, and when I took on my other consultant, and then basically got pregnant again, which is a little bit earlier than I anticipated. So I obviously had to take a bit of maternity period in 2016. Came back 2017, carried on as we were, took on another person during my maternity cover. So long story short, just sort of had a good first couple of years, but a bit stop-start from a point of view of that and family. And then my first consultant left me, and so I had to, dealt with all of the fallout of that. But over the years, we have, as I said, stayed very much true to perm roots. We do the odd bit of temp, but it's mainly perm. We have, I won't go on too much, I'm sure you'll ask me questions about the structure, but essentially it is insurance, non-clinical veterinary, office support, accountancy and finance, and IT. So very much sort of white collar stuff.
Excellent.
Sorry for the long rambled answer.
No, that was great. Very informative. Thank you very much. So, so you were sort of slowly building the business at that point, and you mentioned, as many of us do, you started that business with yourself, and great, actually, wonderful mum, very kind mum to come and join you and support you in that area.
Yeah,
and then you mentioned about one or two consultants. So what made you get to the point where you were thinking, right, I really want to grow this now?
Okay, so there was 4 of us in the business. We were, we'd had a really strong year in 2017, and we'd sort of, after the sort of fallout of my maternity period and the chap that I had left, that was a really challenging time. But we'd managed to sort of really get back on track in 2017. We won a couple of business awards. We'd relaunched our website. We were really sort of going for it. However, I just felt, and this is a sort of thing for me personally, I'm always looking for improvement and striving to be excellent, I guess. So I felt that I could do with somebody to talk to outside the business, where, you know, to benefit us. And I did look at some kind of just generic management consultancy people, but I just didn't buy into them. I had heard of you, Katie, and I'd seen some results from a company I used to work for that had worked with you. So I sort of tracked centered excellence down, actually, and then and obviously I had the chat and got involved with Rocket. But it was more from I've almost forgotten what the question was, but it was, for me, we were going steadily growing, but I felt like I wanted to take it to the next level, and also just reassure myself that what we were doing was right, and the areas that we perhaps needed to improve on, I had some real guidance on how to do that.
And I think, yeah, and that's important, isn't it? Because often when we're in that situation, we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've got the enthusiasm, we want to make it work. And yet, you know, the key part that's missing is, well, how specifically do I do that? Not even necessarily the ideas, but actually, you know, what's that sort of step-by-step process that I can take that will change this situation?
Yeah.
And what were the sorts of challenges that you were coming up with? Because I know you said the business was in a good position at that point, and actually maybe on the surface of it, for a lot of people, if they're in your position, they might have been thinking, well, hey, you know, I'm ticking over, I'm making money, I'm making good profit, you know, why change that, if you like? So what were the things that were coming up for you?
Okay, so I think what it was, feeling personally like I didn't know enough. That was a sort of internal challenge that I was struggling with, because I'd been out of the industry for a little while, although I knew a lot about the industry I was recruiting into. And certainly as a recruiter, I was always very confident. You know, I felt like I was good at my job. I just thought, as a business owner in recruitment, I felt like I'm sure there's gaps in my knowledge, and that was a challenge. So from that confidence point of view, to know how to push forward, I did struggle a lot with anxiety and sort of stress, and you know, just constantly, you know, if I wasn't at home with my children, you know, I was thinking about the business all the time, and I had sort of no outlet for that. And my husband is in a totally different working environment, so I didn't really ever talk to him about it. So I felt, you know, that was a challenge for me, sort of personally. Staffing, I guess, you know, knowing the right ways to get the best out of people. I'd say one person I had was very consistent, but another one wasn't. And it was kind of knowing, you know, the challenge was how do I improve that situation? So those, I'd say from a financial point of view, we were doing well. So I couldn't say I came in the desperate situation, but it was all those other things. It was more to do with the challenges I was finding internally and mentally, and around managing a really effective team, and I guess knowing who to recruit, and those decisions as well.
And I think, you know, you've hit on something that I imagine probably quite a lot of us can resonate with, around that push and pull between your family, children, you know, time with your loved ones, as well as starting and running a recruitment business. Because as we all know, if we're in recruitment, it's a 24/7 job, isn't it?
Absolutely.
The beauty of it is that you always creating more business yourself. But then the downside of that is that, you know, recruitment really never stops. It's not like a 9-to-5 job where you can just leave the office, go home, and everything's sorted. You could always be calling candidates, couldn't you? So I think you're right. That's something that, you know, a lot of people will probably be in a scenario of thinking, yeah, that's me. And actually, what could be nice to talk about now is how that sort of started changing for you, because in fact you came with an objective, which, if you like, was solely business objective, but actually you've achieved a business objective as well as a personal. So
Yeah,
tell us a bit
completely.
about what sort of changes really happened for you, like let's say in that first year.
Okay, so the first year, again, when the first stage, I had to figure out what do I actually want from this. I found myself there, but with not necessarily an exact feeling of why I'm there, you know, because it's I was very unusual to a lot of the other people because the business was very young. You know, a lot of the guys that I went on the initial course with had been in, you know, had their businesses for sort of 10 plus years and had found maybe they've stagnated or there were issues, and that wasn't the case for me. So the first thing that I figured out was, what is it I actually want to happen here, and actually overcome the fear of growing. I was in a situation where my husband and my mother, who works with us, are very risk averse. You know, they try to protect me, and it was almost battling a little bit. I wanted to grow, I had the ambition to grow, but I had to sort of push through those obstacles and come to that realization of what I wanted out of it and why I wanted it. So that was kind of a massive thing. And then so I came away definitely convinced that, yeah, no, I know what I want from my business, and I know why I want it, and now I have to start making some changes. And initially it was to do with a confidence around fees. Actually, like, one of my issues initially was we were way too cheap, and I think we still got some work to do on that, but that was a massive revelation, and actually it helped me to have those conversations with people and to justify why we were increasing our rates. And so immediately that improved, obviously, the amount of money we were able to earn off of our placements. The next sort of wake up call was around people in my team, because we'd sort of grown organically. There was no real structure to what people were working on. It was almost like a bit of a free-for-all, and if a job come in, it would be like, oh well, you had the last one, so I better give that to you. And that, you know, and actually the massive wake-up call from one of the sessions at the business x-ray was, actually we need to have efficiencies around our, you know, divisions. So we started to put in, you know, certain consultants then ran certain areas, and there were some difficult conversations to be had there, because certain people thought they were losing something, you know, and you had to make sure you had the right person doing the right job. But that was another massive turning point in our business, as to how we went from just making more placements and making better use of our candidates, because people are now focused in one or two, you know, two areas rather than everything. And that was a huge turning point. So, you know, the restructure, I'd say I credit with probably one of the main reasons of how we took our, you know, our fees up and our turnover up so much. And then it became about understanding the team, and what their job roles, what their natural flow was, and therefore are they doing the right type of job for them, and tweaking that, you know, over time, and making sure people were getting the best out of their job role. And as a result of that, you know, you come to realize who maybe in your team is working for you, who perhaps isn't. And then again, a very difficult decision to be made around a person that had that we said goodbye to. But again, that was another huge turning point for the whole team, of saying goodbye to someone that was wrong, and then promoting someone who wasn't in the right role before, but now is, and is absolutely flying. So these were the things that we started implementing, really.
Yeah. So tell us, let's go back to the fees. So what were the fees previously, and then what have you, you know, what have you changed there?
So bearing in mind we work in rural Somerset or southwest, so we had fees at 8%, embarrassingly. And I'd say, as I say, we are still working hard. We are now much more 15, so we've come a long way. We still have volume clients, however, that are on 12 and a half, and that's the difficulty for us, is because the actual amount of placements we make a month is pretty phenomenal. And if I can just continue to work on our fees, it would make our life, so much easier, and we would smash target every single month, and when we're doing very well. But I think it's a long game, and I think that the thing is, for me, is you cannot because we're happy in the areas we're working on. We don't want to, we've said no to a lot of clients, we've turned away clients, but there's a lot that we do happily want to work with. So it's just got to be a long game in terms of how we increase our fees over time. So yeah, I'd say the days of 8 are gone, long gone. And it's now, I'd say our average is 13, whereas so that has increased a lot. But as I say, I know that's not as bold as some of our people that we work with, but for me, it's where what I was comfortable with.
Absolutely. Well, that's a huge increase, isn't it? It's from where you're taking the client to where you the next stage you're taking them to. So
yes.
it's when you think of it as a percentage uplift, that is that's a significant uplift.
Yeah.
And then you talked about the team then and the restructure of that team. So what were the team? First of all, what sort of roles, what was the structure of the team before, and then where is that now? Because I know you've made some big changes.
Yeah, so what we had was, so myself, I was in very much a billing role, and I would sort of pick up whatever job I fancied, really, like that. That's as simple as it was. And then I had a senior consultant, and again, she had inherited a lot of my old, when I went on maternity, she inherited a lot of my previous clients, so she was still sort of working a number of those, and that was across every single sector that we worked in. We had a lady that had recently joined us who was sort of doing a lot of I'd say the slack. So as new clients came in, I would give them to her, but she was sort of scratching around and was a bit frustrated, I think, because the lion's share would probably go to other people, and she was sort of picking up some terrible jobs, really, that were just not particularly fillable. And then I had an administrator, sort of resourcer, who would do all of our first stages. So when I came back from maternity, I made the decision at that point to bring in someone whose sole focus was like in a resourcing role, so it enabled myself and my other consultant that had the time to just purely focus on selling and second staging, and getting it through to placement. So we've sort of moved towards that model naturally anyway. So when the restructure, I looked at all the kind of clients we were working on and the people I had in the business, and it was a sort of decision of, wow, like this poor consultant scratching around, no wonder she's inconsistent, because she's not really getting a fair slice of the action. One person who's got shed loads of jobs, but in every single sector known to man, and therefore won't be able to fill half of them. And then you got me picking up the odd bits that I fancy doing. So I then sort of clearly came away with, right, these are the sectors we operate in, and this is what is making us money. And then I to the senior consultant, right, you're solely focused now on insurance and the non-clinical vets, because that's what she knew. And then the other lady that was sort of scratching around, you purely focused on all our office support vacancies. That's what you're going to own now. And there was a little bit of pull around when these jobs would come in that would previously have gone to somebody else. It was a little bit tense at times, but I sort of explained that this is going to pay off in the long run. If you can just focus and on these roles, you're going to fill more of them. The fees are going to be higher, blah blah blah, and you get out in flow because you're not doing any business development at the moment. That's what you enjoy, and you're going to get a chance to actually do that. And we'll recruit you a resourcer as well, because I believe in, let's get another resourcer in. So we started recruiting an additional resourcer. We kept the resourcer in that role for a while, as it was. And that definitely improved efficiencies immediately. So by having someone focused on office support, someone focused on insurance, and that was working really, really well. It was only then we uncovered values issues with one of the consultants that we had to say goodbye. We then brought in, I decided to focus in on a particular niche. So it wasn't just me picking up whatever job I fancied. Now I do accountancy, purely accountancy only, and I run the rest of my time is running the team and the business and such. And then we recruited a further 2 members of staff, and each person has got their designated area, and they don't stray from it. Yeah.
Brilliant. So very sort of that laser focus on what's the niche, what's that discipline that each individual is responsible for. And then also about having that playing to everyone's strengths in terms of what are the roles that they're in, and then how do we structure that business, or so you've got the team structured so that you can almost increase and leverage the productivity because people are in those really key strategic roles supported, like you're saying, with resources. And what would you say, for example, and we'll get to the results in a second, what would you say to somebody who, and only because I know this comes up sometimes as a question for people, which is, if I've got my billing heads, and let's say I work a 360 model and I've got my billing heads, if I was to move to a different model, like let's say a 240, where I've got my consultant doing business development delivery, and then I'm paying for another resourcer, is that not going to cost me more, for example? What would you, from your experience, what would you be saying about that?
Absolutely no, it would not. Okay, you're going to have to make an initial investment perhaps at the beginning, but it totally pays off in terms of productivity, because it is, I tried the 360 model with the first consultant and the second consultant that came into the business, and what was happening is we were fortunate enough to have a lot of vacancies, and that individual, there was no way could they concentrate on filling those jobs, dealing with all the candidates, and then making time to do business development. So it just wasn't happening. So not only were we not necessarily progressing, the people themselves were left feeling very frustrated because they continually feel like they're not meeting your expectations because of the time constraints. I think it's so challenging now to find good candidates, particularly where we are as well. A lot of time goes into that you just do not get. If you want to fill those vacancies, which of course is why we're here, you don't have the time to focus on the business development. So I wholeheartedly believe that it is totally essential to invest in the two, to have somebody that's solely focused on the candidate side, on the admin, and picking up that, so that the other person who has the skills to go out and help grow the business ultimately has time to actually go and do that. It's essential.
Great. That's brilliant. Thank you for that. And then, so tell us what difference that's made to your results by doing that. Because again, this is what people will be interested in, because I think there's a reticence with some that if I switch my 360 model, I'm going to get less billings. And then, I'm not going to be achieving the same sort of revenue levels. So tell us what that's done for you in that area. What sort of results have you been getting from that?
Well, I think it having looked at it, our turnover has gone up in the sort of the 2 calendar years of working in this way. It's a combined increase of 94% up. And that's only one extra, in fairness, like overall in terms of headcount, it's one person. But I'd say, profit, which is what everyone really does want to focus on, 40% increase by investing in people that focus in on the candidate side and enable those wheels to keep turning. So yeah, that's those are the figures, and they speak for themselves. And I think now what we strive to achieve on a month-on-month basis is almost double to what we were striving to achieve before when we had pretty much the same amount of people, but just not doing the job in this way. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah, brilliant. And thank you for sharing that, because I think that's part of the confidence levels that other people need to hear, because this is doing recruitment in a different way. This is not, you know, our old style of doing it, which we've all, let's be honest, have been brought up, haven't we, for years.
Yeah.
You know, I ran that 360 model myself and thought that that was the only way to do recruitment. And actually, you know, we know, as you and I both know, there are other ways of doing it which do give much greater productivity in return. It's just.
Well, I'll give you a real key example. So we recently, so it took us a little while to find our second sort of resourcer, to make sure it was the right person. And so that person's gone in to support it, a consultant, our senior consultant, who averaged $9,000 a month on her own, you know, doing this, you know, everything herself. Put in the resourcer, you know, it's not a hugely expensive role. They just combined, you know, for 2 months done 15k and 17k just by having this person supporting her. And she's also finding time to go out and do, you know, the visits and the selling and all those things I want her to do from a bigger picture point of view.
Brilliant. And, you know, there's an example of somebody who enjoys that part. And so, you know, from a retention aspect, which you kind of touched on actually slightly earlier, didn't you? Which is when people are in these roles, what do you see the difference in terms of their engagement with the business when they're doing, you know, that part of the role that they really enjoy?
Yeah, I found that particularly the ones that love the stars or supporters that enjoy getting out and about, they can get very sort of stale being in the office day in, day out, doing essentially the same thing day in, day out. And then you sort of see the negativity creeping in and the moans about this, that and the other. When they're in, you know, when they're out doing the job they enjoy and they're getting good feedback from those visits and clients and out in the office, they're just like totally different people. The buzz and the feel in our office is absolutely fantastic. Having the right people, you know, I absolutely love coming to work. You know, I'm very fortunate, I've got a fantastic team, and again have now got the tools to be able to know how to deal with problems effectively. But luckily they don't creep in, because it's more about preventative, you know, motivating them all the time and having those constant reviews so you can pick up on any issues. But yeah, I mean, it's just a much buzzier environment with very minimal complaints, to be honest, because everyone's happy in their job.
Brilliant. Well, good work from you on that. So we've talked about the model, we've talked about and the fees, and just on that actually, because I know that, you know, and again, you'll tell me where this come from, but you've improved your fill rate, haven't you, from 25% to 47%. What would you say was the biggest influencer of that outcome, that result?
The focus, the laser focus of, I work these roles all the time. So I know I have, you know, I'm constantly operating in that candidate space. So when the job comes in, I now actually have people available immediately, or I know at least immediately where to go to find them. So that's a massive thing. And the time element of having the support in place, we can react very quickly, you know, because there's enough people working on each section to know that it doesn't matter, therefore, if someone's on holiday or, you know, those things that would affect your ability to do business before, because if you're relying on one consultant to look after, you know, a whole host of clients, the minute they go off on holiday for 2 weeks, you know, that's it. There's very minimal activity going on. But by having people, more than one person working in that division together, it keeps activity levels going. So we don't, you know, we turn around vacancies. The other thing that's massively affected fill rate is the brief. So one of the things we gleaned from Rocket was taking the vacancy specification and being really, really clear with the client, drilling down exactly what their needs are before we try and attempt to fill a role. I mean, it was not uncommon that we would get a 2-line email from a client say, got this job, can you go and fill it? And we go, yeah, of course. Well, you'd have, you know, 2 lines of information. How can you possibly know what is going to make make the perfect candidate from that. But so now we don't tolerate that. Every single vacancy we get, they have a proper consultation with the consultant, resource or account manager, so we really know how fillable that role is. We will turn away jobs or won't work on jobs that just don't have a good sort of rate of fillability, and then we have a very sort of clear set process with the clients. If after a few days it's not going anywhere, we commit to going back to that client and saying, right, these are the areas you told us, these aren't working, what can we compromise on? If we can't compromise, then your job sort of goes down a little bit, like the priority order. So it's just managing our clients much more effectively as well in that process, and you're not working 80 roles where 40 of them are unfillable.
Right. And how have your clients responded to those changes?
A lot of them absolutely love the thorough approach, and they don't really bat an eyelid. And I think it's, okay, that's a good question. Somewhere they may not have been used to that type of approach before, and they were working with agencies that would, and us before maybe, that took the 2-line brief. Oh, okay, bit put off that they have to spend a little bit more time. But I think as long as you position it in such a way that it's for their benefit, then not had any pushback at all. And actually, if you get pushback, then they're clearly not the right ones to be working with.
Right. Interesting. So being very selective, more selective. So actually almost working less rather than more.
Oh gosh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And again, that goes against the grain, doesn't it? Of often we think we've got to take more jobs. Actually we need more candidates, more jobs to be more successful and to bill more, when actually what you're talking about is the polar opposite almost, isn't it?
Yeah, it is just purely focusing on what you stand the best chance of actually filling. And we had a prime example of that when a consultant came in. We had a massive client. Funny if it was one of my oldest clients from years before when I was in recruitment. They gave us loads of jobs, and she was working these positions with filling nothing, barely anything. So we said, this just isn't serving us, and this isn't going to be serving you. So as hard as that was, because I've worked with them a very, very long time, I had to say very nicely goodbye. And then she focused in on certain other roles, and she's consistently hit her target ever since. Whereas before, she was barely getting anywhere near it, because all of her time was being taken up with time wasting client.
So how would you, on that sort of note, let's say you're a business owner and you've got somebody in your team who isn't performing or not performing as well as they could do in the role. How do you know the difference between whether, like you're saying, that it's the role rather than, as we say, it's not your people, it's your process. How do you ascertain the difference? How would you go about? What would be your advice to someone? Let's say, for example, they think they might have somebody in their business who isn't quite performing at the level that they want.
Okay.
How would you?
I think that does boil down to sort of two things really, around knowing their data and making sure you're collecting the relevant information from every single person every single week, because otherwise you're basically relying on anecdotal gut feelings of and what do you judge? Okay, they might not be hitting target, but you've got absolutely no reason why, unless you understand the output. Clearly, if you collect that information and you then analyze that information, and it should take someone 3 interviews to get a placement, and this person's only arranging 1, there's your answer. And then obviously you can work with that person to ascertain why are they not getting more interviews. Is it that they don't have enough jobs? And then you can sort of work it all back. So I think the answer to performance management, as I say, is 2 things. One is having the right information and making sure you're collecting that every single week without fail and using that with your people, but also having the right conversations with your people constantly. So if it isn't about an activity thing, if it's about a personal issue or a motivational issue, you're close enough to your people that you can uncover that very, very quickly, and that you can only do that by having quality reviews with your team. And I think you know, some people, I certainly was like this before. I was very inconsistent with my one-to-ones. You know, I'd book them and then I'd cancel them. And that was another massive takeaway from the first ever session I attended, was treat your team like your clients. And I'm very much, you know, I'd never cancel a client meeting unless I was nearly, you know, my arm was hanging off or something. But I wouldn't think anything of cancelling my team one-to-ones or my team meeting. And that had to change. And now absolutely religiously every single month we do our full on, you know, monthly review with everybody if we need to do weekly desk audits, because, you know, that will do that. We also do our team meeting. Everyone has to provide their stats every single week, and there's no hiding from that.
Yeah, great. And it doesn't sound like they're worried about hiding. If you're doing it, then
they understand. Again, it's all about understanding what they're going to be getting from this at the end of the day. If you bring them on, and I think that's been the key with this, you know, it's been a huge commitment from my part, you know, and everybody else's, but we've brought them on the journey with me, and they get so excited when I come back from, you know, a session, because they can't wait to hear what, I think there's maybe sometimes a bit of trepidation, but generally they cannot wait to hear what we're going to do next. It's, you know, it's always exciting and always improving, and that is, you know, it's not been a case of it's all secret squirrel and, you know, you don't know what I'm doing on these courses. It's very much they're involved every single step of the way.
Awesome. And so tell us, because the personal development side for you has played a pretty, you know, important, integral part, hasn't it? As you were saying earlier, you know, you've got a very busy life in terms of running a family, running young children, and running the business. So what's changed for you there?
So yeah, that's been a massive thing, really, because as part of the whole journey, I started reading again, which I think I read the Daily Mail occasionally if on my phone, but that was about the extent of my my reading for the last 10 years. So I thought, oh, actually, I need to start reading some proper literature, you know. So I think I read the 4-hour work week, and the one thing that was just sort of really shouting out to me was that I have nothing in my life bar going to work, and, you know, I make all my time for that, and going home and being mum, and that's exciting, but there's nothing in between. And if I were to get to a 4-hour work week, what would I actually do with my time? Because my sole focus is work, and that's great, but not particularly healthy. So I thought, right, I need, and the other thing was the whole fitness thing. I thought for a long time, I need to take this in hand, and hadn't, just kept putting it off, making excuses about time and all the rest of it. And then came and thought, no, I am just gonna effing do it, as we say. And so I went along, got back into him again, got my team on side, because I wanted to do it at the beginning of the day, because with my children, obviously they are a priority. I have to do that, so it was going to eat into the team time a little bit. So I sat them all down, explained what I wanted to do, totally supported it, and so I basically went back to the gym. I got a personal trainer, which I had never ever thought about doing, or I had thought, but I thought, oh, waste of money. But he said to me, I had a free session, and the words he said were, nothing good happens within your comfort zone. And I thought, oh my god, this bloke was sent from Centered Excellence, basically. So I thought, oh, he's speaking my language. And so yeah, I embarked that in March, and 4 days a week without fail I go, and I feel great about myself. I don't feel it's not hindered anything in terms of work. You know, I'm more productive as a result. I have something that's just for me. It's great stress reliever. It's given me, you know, if I start the day feeling a bit rubbish, and he's very motivational, as you can tell, he makes me feel back, you know, it puts everything in perspective, and it starts the day brilliantly. So that's been a massive turning point for me. And also reading, you know, I've read more books, I think I wrote in my comments to you, in 6 months, and I had in, you know, crikey, about 10 years, just making tiny bits of time. Gratitude journal, you know, I do that and I read that back, and that is so fulfilling and life-changing, actually, when you focus in on that. Making time for my friends and my family, and you know, not feeling bad that sometimes I will have a day and I'll go off from work and I'll spend it with a friend, and just making those decisions that for the good of everybody, and not being a slave to this. But as I say, certainly would not see it in our results that I have had this time.
Yeah. And that's the, that's such an interesting and wonderful part, isn't it? Is that you're spending a lot of or more time outside of the office, having that time yourself. And yet the results have gone up, as you said, 94% increase. So, for those listening, thinking, I too don't have enough time, then, actually there always is time, isn't there?
Yeah,
and in fact, when you make that time for you, when you prioritize yourself, the most important thing, then everything just falls into place.
Yeah. And it is what you just said there is important. It's making time. If you sit around waiting for something to happen to you, and it's actually for every aspect of what we're doing in life, whether it be for fitness or whether it's to do with business, if you sit around waiting for something to happen, the chances are it won't. It has to come from you. You have to implement changes to get different results, and sometimes that is uncomfortable, but I know, looking back now, everything that's been uncomfortable has been worth it, 10 times over. And it's just facing your fear and just cracking on with actions, even if those actions are small. And I think I spent a lot of time comparing myself to perhaps others, and you see some people making some dramatic changes, and you think, oh crikey, I'm not bold enough, I've just done these. Well, the tiny tweaks are as important as the dramatic changes, and over time those tweaks add up to something huge. And I think you've got to go at your own pace, but at the same time, don't feel afraid to push yourself out of comfort, because that's probably where the bigger shifts will come.
Right. And I would totally agree with you. Everything you want is outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So it's about putting yourself out there. So Emma, you have been great. Is there one last piece of sort of passing advice that you would give to anybody who wants to grow their recruitment business, and maybe, they're slightly afraid of making that leap? What would your one piece of advice be to them?
JFDI, just do it. Don't be afraid. There's nothing actually, what's it? There's the cave you most fear to enter holds the biggest rewards. And I'd say, you will regret being afraid and doing nothing, because doing nothing is not going to get you closer to your goals. So just bite the bullet and get on with it.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And thank you so much for being so generous with your time, and all of your insights and shares today. And I, totally understand why you were crowned, rightly so, Female Entrepreneur of the Year.
Thank you very much.
What you've achieved is amazing. So really well done to you. And thank you so much for being on the call with us today.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, thank you, Emma. And thanks, everyone, for joining us. And we'll be back again soon, very soon. Take care.
Bye.